Week 26, ELA, pre-lesson deliverables. We are in, I guess, the third lesson of week 26, and it is the gallery walk of World War II. So, class, we are beginning something today that I'm very passionate about, and I can't wait to explain it more to you, and that is World War II. As you know from reading Sadako over the break, we are going to be studying literature from World War II. Sadako is one of a few different pieces of literature that we're going to be looking at. So if you liked the history and the setting of that story as it's connected to this larger history, then you're really going to like Number of the Stars and a number of other stories. So I want to give us then an opportunity to talk about what World War II was. So we got some backstory with Sadako. We learned about Japanese war against the United States of America and the legacy of the dropping of an atomic bomb. There were 2 bombs dropped, one of which hit Hiroshima, which affected our character, and we talked about how even today the biology of that part of the world is still affected from the radiation that was caused by the atomic dropping, or the atomic bomb dropping. Let's pull back a little bit more though, because I want us to look at the war in total. The Japanese or the Asian theater of war, the Pacific theater of war, that's just one part of it. And what gets a little bit more fame is actually what happened in Europe. So we're going to bounce back and forth between these 2 different places, Europe, Asia. We have our map. There's going to be a map. And we can look to see at the 2 spots. So right now, everybody with your finger point to the continent of Europe on the map. Okay, this is Europe right here. And what Europe represented in this war were 2 nations led by 2 very powerful men. To back it up for a little bit, just to go full broad scope looking at the world, World War II is a world fought because of powerful men trying to take control of things. Okay, it causes conflict throughout the world in a lot of different ways, but it's about really 3 different very powerful men trying to take things. Who can raise their hand and tell me, what was World War II fought about? Powerful men trying to take things. One of these powerful men that tried to take things, maybe you've heard of him, is a guy named Adolf Hitler. Raise your hand if you've heard of Adolf Hitler. Okay. He was the chancellor and the prime minister and the eventual just like, he called himself the Führer, which means father. Many people call him daddy, of the nation of Germany. Now, he saw the nation of Germany as being bigger than what it really was, so he started to take land, to take power. So he would just roll up, he called it blitzkrieg, with his forces. Blitzkrieg means lightning war, and he would take these tanks and these he would pull ships onto the shores of the ocean of some neighboring country, and he would just take over that country. Move to another. This is called imperialism. He took over Poland, he took over Austria, he took over France eventually. So the other nations of Europe did what they had to, and they said, okay, we declare war, this cannot go on, and so that's how the European theater of World War II begins. He has a friend named Benito Mussolini, should be a PowerPoint actually, so we see Benito Mussolini, who was the leader of Italy. Both of these men, Hitler and Mussolini, first of all, just think of them as best friends. They really did have an admiration for each other. Hitler's a sociopath. He could not really admire anything besides his own. He loved the mirror is what he loved. But Benito Mussolini, I always think of Mussolini as just really wanting to be friends with Hitler and willing to do anything that he needed to do, including supply oil to Hitler and his troops and feed their war effort, because Mussolini just wanted to be, he thought Hitler was cool. Maybe the only person in the history of the world that thought Hitler was cool, but Mussolini really wanted to fit in. So he helps out Hitler, and those two friends decide they're going to take over tons of land. They take over France. They try to take over England. England holds. England, we're going to talk more about them, but they do not submit. They do not concede against the Nazi forces. So that's what's going on in Europe. In Asia, same thing. A guy named Hideki Tojo is taking land for the country of Japan. He's taking land in China and Mongolia. And what do you think is happening to the people that live on the land when these Japanese forces are invading? Yeah, many of them do. They get killed. They lose their lives. They're shot. There's many of them. The Japanese, we're going to get to this in a second, did some very terrible things to people. But yes, so there's a human cost to this. And the United States gets involved because the Japanese, for a number of reasons, decide they're going to bomb Pearl Harbor, a United States base. And so the United States declares war against Japan. So now we've got all this fighting going on. This is why World War II was such a huge deal. 60 million people lose their lives because there's America fighting Japan in Asia. There's America fighting Nazis, along with the help of the British and the Soviet Union and Europe. The legacy of this war is pain, suffering, and death. Okay? Like I said, 60 million people lose their lives. The Holocaust exists during this war. While all of this fighting is going on out front, sort of behind the scenes, Hitler is executing millions of people because they were Jewish, or because they were gypsy people, Roma, or because they were gay. We're going to talk more about that. He believed they had something of a mental illness. If he said that if you have ADHD, then you're going to be killed and that was a part of the Holocaust too. So, death and destruction. By the way, and what was happening in Japan was disgusting with the torture that was going on at the hands of Hideki Tojo. And even the United States does some pretty shady stuff with this war called internment camps that we're going to look at more as well. It's maybe the ugliest time in the history of the world, which is terrible and also really interesting. So we're going to read more about that in the days to come.